Zechariah chapter number 7. Zechariah chapter number 7. Zechariah. Zechariah chapter number 7. And I want to read through, then we'll take some feedback and give some thoughts. I think it's an easier chapter to look at and to glean. Chapter 7 verse 1 says, "And it came to pass in the 4th year of King Darius that the word of the Lord came unto Zechariah in the 4th day of the 9th month, even in Chislu. When they had sent unto the house of God Sharezer and Regem-melech and their men to pray before the Lord, and to speak unto the priests which were in the house of the Lord of hosts, and to the prophets, saying, Should I weep in the 5th month, separating myself, as I have done these so many years? Then came the word of the Lord of hosts unto me, saying, Speak unto all the people of the land, and to the priests, saying, When ye fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month, even those 70 years, did ye at all fast unto me, even to me? And when ye did eat, and when ye did drink, did not ye eat for yourselves, and drink for yourselves? Should ye not hear the words which the Lord hath cried by the former prophets, when Jerusalem was inhabited and in prosperity, and the cities thereof round about her, when men inhabited the south and the plain? And the word of the Lord came unto Zechariah, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Execute true judgment, and show mercy and compassions every man to his brother. And oppress not the widow, nor the fatherless, the stranger, nor the poor. And let none of you imagine evil against his brother in your heart. But they refused to hearken, and pulled away the shoulder, and stopped the ears, that they should not hear. Yea, they made their hearts as an adamant stone, lest they should hear with the law and the words which the Lord of hosts hath sent in his spirit by the former prophets. Therefore came a great wrath from the Lord of hosts. Therefore it is come to pass, that as he cried, and they would not hear, so they cried, and I would not hear, saith the Lord of hosts. But I scattered them with a whirlwind among all the nations whom they knew not. Thus the land was desolate after them, that no man passed through nor returned, for they laid the pleasant land desolate." I think it's an easier chapter. Maybe you do. If you read it, maybe it's not the first time that's read this chapter. Or even if it is your first time, it's somewhat clear, I think. We'll see. Any thoughts? Yes. Yes. Yeah, that was in my notes. Yeah, it is. Isaiah 58 also talks about fasting and talks about the vanity of their fast, that they fasted, but not for the right reasons. So yeah, we might go have a look at that verse. Connor. And ran on him. Yeah. 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 But they made their hearts as an adamant stone. There's a choice there. So, any other thoughts or observations out of this? Jeff?
10, at the end of it, when it says, "And let none of you imagine evil against his brother in your heart," and it's like, when Jesus was preaching the Sermon on the Mount and saying, you know, if you have hatred in your heart towards your brother, it's like you've murdered them. But people were thinking, it's like a new thing. But no, you can look back at the word of the Lord back here and say, no, it's right, it's there, it's in the Old Testament.
Yeah, every generation has the exact same issues and pitfalls that they fall into. Yeah, and they're the same thing. The verse that I think of when I read that is love, charity, where it says in 1 Corinthians 13, thinketh no evil. Like your default thoughts and your default thought should be to think good of someone and whatever someone has done, to translate that into positivity. But oftentimes we take someone's actions and we naturally, or by our own sinful heart, attribute negativity to it. That's thinking evil. And he says, man, that's not the way to go forward. You want to create problems? Just think evil in your heart and attribute evil motives to someone's actions. But he says, no, don't think evil. Let none of you imagine evil against your brother in your heart. And of course, the Sermon on the Mount deals with all of that. You'll be a follower of me. This is how you do it. So you're right on the money. I agree. Any other thoughts or observations out of this? I'll give the sense, or at least the overall thoughts. So you can at least walk away with the idea of what's happened here. So obviously they come back. Some people come back from Babylon. They come back to Jerusalem, and as they come back, this is what they're inquiring of the Lord through the priests at the house of the Lord. Should I weep in the 5th month, separating myself as I have done these so many years? Should we continue doing these things? So for 70 plus years, they had designated a period of time on the 5th month to weep, to mourn for the state of Israel, for the state of Jerusalem, and to afflict themselves before God. And you think, well, should we continue doing this? We've sort of back here building now in the temple, and the temple's being rebuilt. Should this continue? Or should we continue doing this, the fast in the 5th month, or should we stop doing this now? And the word of the Lord came back, and it comes back in a way that they probably weren't expecting. And they said, well, this is what God says, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month, even those 70 years, did you at all fast unto me, even to me? And their answer they would be, no doubt, they would say, yes. And God is saying here, no. And they're shocked. They'll be like, what do you mean? Like we have set aside this month, whether it be the entire month or a period of this month, we are afflicting ourselves before God. Like we are mourning and weeping and we are fasting and removing food and maybe putting on sackcloth and we have a time of mourning in this period. Are we not doing it for you? But God says, no, I don't think you were. Verse 6, he says, when you did eat and when you did drink, did you not eat for yourselves and drink for yourselves? I think what's taking place here is that they were weeping before God, or they're having a time of prayer and seriousness before God, beseeching God and laying out before Him what's taken place. And they're asking God to restore. And I think that's really what's taking place, is that they're saying, God, this is terrible what's happened and what you've brought on us, and that we've taken away and our city is destroyed and our nation is destroyed. We want it back, God. We ask you that you'd restore it back to how it was. Restore it back to how it was. Put the city back and put the temple back and put us back in the land and let the blessings come like our forefathers had. Lord, let it be like that. And you think on the surface, yeah, that's a good thing, isn't it? They're beseeching God. But God sees always through the intent of the heart. And He says, no, underneath this, as much it's religious tapestry, He says, underneath it is a self-centered heart. God, I'm really just praying this. And God is, it seems, this is my understanding of it, how I read it. and they're just saying, God is saying, no, you're doing this really for your own motives, for your own thing. It's got nothing to do with me. You're praying towards me that I might merely return the blessings back to you. But they're never actually changed in their actions and their heart towards God. It's not like they're genuinely repentant towards God of the sins again that brought about the actions. They just want the actions turned back. They want the blessings back. They want things back. And God is saying, well, did you listen to the prophets? Which is what he's saying. Verse 7, should ye not hear the words which the Lord hath cried by the former prophets when Jerusalem was inhabited and in prosperity? He says the very sins that caused this, you have never actually dealt with. Even after 70 years, all of the preaching is still there. The preaching of Jeremiah, the preaching of Isaiah, the preaching of the minor prophets that came along and preached. And he says, they're still valid. The message that they had is still valid. And you are fasting before me every 5th month that I might make things better and you might be blessed. But you've never actually still dealing with the heart issues before me that caused all of this, that caused my wrath to be poured out. You're still not walking before me like you ought to. Then he goes on and gives specific ways in which they are still walking. So verse 8 says, and the word of the Lord came unto Zechariah, saying, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, execute true judgment, and show mercy and compassion every man to his brother. So Jeremiah, as much as idolatry is so central to the message of Jeremiah, underneath it, if you read through it, he tells you, do I delight in riches, and do I delight in the wisdom of man? He goes, no, I'll tell you what I delight in. I delight that a person understands and knows me, that I execute judgment and justice. And he has a quarrel against the princes of the land, the rulers of the land, who were stealing money, who were taking away the rights of the widows and the fatherless and the poor in the land, and they were trampling on over them, not caring about them and caring only for themselves, and you abusing them. And so when someone would come in before the law courts, they would take favor to the rich because they get kickbacks and things like that, and they would completely forget about justice being done and equity being done to the poor and to the vulnerable. And God is saying to them, right, that's what I had with your fathers. In fact, Jeremiah came and preached this before your city was taken captive. Isaiah dealt with this. I've dealt with them when the city was in prosperity, and yet still you have not changed your behavior towards each other. You're just as self-centered as you've ever been. And you're here praying every fifth month for the last 70 plus years that I will pour out a blessing and restore everything back again, but you haven't changed your behavior before me. You're still the same. You're still not actually treating people like I treat people. You still have animosity and hatred in your hearts. You're still thinking evil. You're still not executing true judgment. You're still not showing mercy, and you're not having compassion every man to his brother. And you're still oppressing widows and the fatherless, the strangers, the poor. And he says, let none of you imagine evil against his brother in his heart. But he says, this is what I want you to live like. I don't really care. And this is what God is saying. I don't care that you're doing these wonderful religious activities when your life isn't backing up your religious activities. You're fasting every 5th month for 70 years. Oh, we are so zealous and we are so faithful before God in performing this particular religious task. Right, but how are you treating one another? God is saying, you're not treating one another very well. Your religious actions isn't being passed into religious behavior. And so he says, I don't really care about your fasts. Were you really fasting for me, or are you fasting for yourself? And he's saying, well, you're really fasting for yourself. You just want everything, you want all the good stuff back without ever actually addressing the behavior that brought about the judgment of God. And he says in verse 11, it goes on, but they refused to hearken. They pulled away the shoulder. There's different versions of what that actually means, but the one I think it just means what it sounds like. They pulled away the shoulder. So what do you mean, pulled away the shoulder? Well, have you ever had a child that might turn their back on you while talking, and they turn away, and what do? You put your hand on the shoulder to bring them back, and what do? No, don't. They pulled away the shoulder. It's like an attitude. It's a physical action showing the intent of the heart. And that child that pulls away the shoulder and that says, don't touch me, I don't want to don't turn me back around. Well, God is saying, well, I'm putting the shot, I've been, through the prophets and through the preaching, been putting my hand on you as you have your back towards me, that I might turn you back to me, that we might be back in intercourse with each other. But you pull away the shoulder every time I try and pull back to you, pull you back to me. You pull away the shoulder, and you stopped your ears. Like, I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I have kids. The youngest ones are the worst at this, it seems. They'll just not listen. Call their names, do their things, not listen. They stop their heart. They'd much rather play with their cars or whatever it is. And they made their hearts as adamant stones. No, I will not change my behavior. God is saying, I want you to treat such and such with kindness and compassion. No, I will, no. And the preaching might come forward, and the preaching about this. And you're thinking, and God, the Holy Spirit convicts the heart about how you're going to live towards a certain person. And you know what we do in those moments? We harden our hearts. I'm not going to show compassion to that person. I'm not going to show mercy to that person. I'm execute true judgment, show mercy, compassion, everyone to his brother. No, not going to do it. And God is saying, right, so you're still going through the religious activities of fasting, but you're actually not prepared to put into practice my ways one towards another. But you want me to restore back what I took away. He says this seems to be contradictory behavior. Do you notice? What is God's answer ultimately about whether they should continue fasting or not? No, it actually doesn't even answer the question. I'm not going to tell you whether they should keep fasting or not keep fasting. And they walked away going, well, should we keep fasting or should we not keep fasting? I don't really know. The answer's not even given there. But God just simply says, I'll tell you what I really want. I want your behavior different. I don't want religious activity. I want religious behavior. I want it lived out, not just this vain religious ceremonies. Don't just go through the motions. Is it possible, people on a Wednesday night, is it possible to go through religious actions and not have a heart for the things of God? Well, yeah, here we are we not? Right. And should we ask this question? Should we continue going to church on a Wednesday night? Right. I don't even know what you said. But we can ask this question, can we not? Well, should we continue going to church on a Wednesday night? We've had good habits for this. For 40 plus years in this particular church, people have met on a Wednesday night. Well, really, maybe that's not even the question. God is saying, well, you know what I really care about? I actually care that you actually come to pray before me is what I really care about. And if you can't have bothered having a heart to come to pray before me and to be serious about my house, then I really don't care about your activity. But the activity is not necessarily right or wrong. It's that the heart be right with it. Come and assemble and do it. Don't just be religious and think, oh, surely this will give me brownie points with God because I come on a Wednesday night. God says, I don't give brownie points for showing up on a Wednesday night. I give brownie points for hearts that are sincere and right before me and right before your fellow neighbours. That's where I give out my approval. And what's that? It's a whole heap of different things that could go down that list. Tithing to all of those. We're going to deal with this a little bit on the positive side on Sunday morning. But this is the negative side of doing things before God. But yeah. But anyway, guess what? He said this 500 years before Jesus came along. 500 years later, Jesus was dealing with this very same issue. And 2,000 years after Jesus, guess what? It's like, man, I think this is relevant. I think this is how we live, is it not? We're right there. We're right there. Find a prayer partner or two tonight and bring the requests before the Lord.